how do you make sense of this year? It's only March.
The year or the last 12 days?
Nah.
Which one?
Seems, I mean, the last 12 days kind of, I think, for a lot of people feels like a year.
Yeah, I think,
you look at the
I think
moves-
each day or week feels like a year.
Yeah.
Do you separate them out in terms of the last, since the U.S. War in Iran?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you think about where we were heading into the end of February when the conflict started or escalated, we were in a situation with economic data where the focus was on the labor market, clearly weak. You saw that with the backward look data that came last Friday. You had people believing that inflation was probably needed another leg down before it got a move, and that wasn't happening. I think today's report showed you, and we just heard from the last guest, that there's some things happening under with some tariff pass-through and things that people were wondering if they were going to happen. And so we were having a sideways trend in rates. And all this is done, obviously, you guys were just talking about the energy supply shock, and that's a really tough thing for a central bank to deal with.
Yeah, and I think because there's so much uncertainty about what the duration of this will be, that's why we've seen such big moves. How do you plan for something like that when you're thinking about investing, when you're making recommendations for what to buy? Is that something you ignore, or is it something that you actually are taking into account?
Yeah, a couple things there. There's two durations. One, there's the duration of how this period of war lasts. Yeah. Right? So, that might end soon, it might not. The second is the duration of how long the supply shock could last for. If they turn certain energy development off, it might take a long time to turn it back on. You have the Straits. The Straits open. Are we going to flow at however many vessels per day as we were before? Probably not. There's probably going to be some ramp up period.
We've heard that about, was it aluminum smelter when we were at Bloomberg Invest? It's being shut down in the Middle East, and that's going to take 7-8 months to restart.
Yeah. So the question. So there's a couple durations to think about. When you talk about investing, I think a lot about the size of investment matters, right? You want to make sure you're sized to absorb wide range of outcomes. We believed coming into this year that there was a lot of really good pricing in the market and a lot of headlines that might not have matched the really good pricing. Yeah. We have a group at the BNY Institute where we talk about and banty about different topics, and we all kind of collectively saw that maybe the headlines didn't match the pricing, and so therefore it might make sense to make sure you're sizing appropriately.
When you guys get together, what do you most talk about? And I think about actually a conversation we had with Leanne Russell, Chief Information Officer at BNY at our Bloomberg Invest, and she talked about AI and digital employees. We were kind of blown away by the conversation of what you guys are doing. What's top of mind?
Yeah, so we have a lot of cool stuff going on with that. I'll let Leanne
I know.
talk about what's going on here.
When you think about it,
but when we talk about on the investment side, there's a lot of different lenses, right? You have significant CapEx. That's been a huge tailwind for the economy in a lot of different ways. Look at the size of these bond deals that are coming out. This is a lot of money that's recycling back on the investment side.
You're comfortable. They're the big tech that are largely doing this. You're comfortable with that?
Well, I personally, in our portfolio that I run, don't invest in corporate debt. Yeah. But we do think a lot about what that means for the overall investment, it's under the shelves of things that are available and what's out there. But from an economic macro perspective, it's very supportive of economic activity.
10 seconds. Glass half full, glass half empty when it comes to the investment environment.
I'm taking a drink. It's about right in the middle. I do think it's right in the middle.
You could have called him Eliza, which is the chatbot's name at BNY.
Well done. Good memory.
Well played, Tim. Well played.